morning. Good morning. Welcome to State Street. We're so glad you're here with us today. You could have chosen to be anywhere, but you chose to be here, and we're so glad you're here. To everyone online, welcome. We hope you find this a place where you can just relax, put your cares to the side, and worship God. So good morning.
Sacrificed your life so I could live. Thank you for the cross that you have carried. Thank you for your blood that was shed. You took the weight of sin upon your shoulders
Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last, your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Within your love, my heart will sing your praise again. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you've never failed. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you've never failed me yet. Promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you've never failed. Your promise still stands, Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. You've never failed me yet. And I never will forget. And you never failed me yet. And I never will forget.
When the pieces seem to shatter and gather off the floor, and all that seems to matter is I don't feel you anymore. I don't feel you anymore. I need a reason to sing. I need a reason to sing. I need to know that you're still holding the whole world in your hands. I need a reason to sing. When I'm overcome by fear and I hate everything I know, if this waiting lasts forever, I'm afraid I might let go. I'm afraid I might let go. Oh, I need a reason to sing. I need a reason to sing. I need to know that you're still holding the whole world in your hands. I need a reason to sing. Oh, yeah. There be a victory. Will you sing it over me now? There be a melody. Will you sing it over me now? To know that you're still holding the whole world in your hands. That is a reason to sing.
Good morning. Wasn't that beautiful? Whew, that's a good one. Welcome to State Street. We are very glad that you're with us today. Before we jump into our message, I would like to make a quick announcement that we're going to be making several times over the next few weeks. At our staff meeting this week, we meet every Tuesday for our staff meeting, and Nate said, "How are you coming on the Thanksgiving Eve meal?" And I looked at him like, huh? That's like at the end of November. And then it dawned on me that October is almost over. It just goes by so fast. But our Thanksgiving Eve meal, our annual Thanksgiving Eve meal, is coming up very, very quickly. It is the night before Thanksgiving. And next week, we will start sign-ups. So I just wanted to get that on your radar. Next week, I'll be out at the information desk. When I say sign-ups, that means you can volunteer for all different sorts of areas. You can volunteer to cook a turkey, to cook a ham, to make desserts, to serve during that actual event that evening. And it's a really great event. If you've never been a part of it, I encourage you to do so in some capacity, because it's just a great way. It's a great night of community. And so just to get that on your radar, you're going to be hearing more about that over the next few weeks, but more so starting next week, but just so that we can know that it's coming. We are currently in our series on mental health, and before we jump into this week's passage, this week's lesson, we're going to pray together. So please pray with me. God, may we all be free from suffering and the root of suffering. May our practice of listening release the illusion of separation. We say that again. May our practice of listening release the illusion of separation. May we love well because we have been loved so very well. May we see the way you see, God, as we truly see our neighbor and learn how to listen. May we listen. May it heal the listener, heal the one who is heard, and bring forth healing in an ever-expanding circle that knows no boundaries. Amen. So, listening is going to be a big part of our message today. But as I said, we are in our series on mental health, which we began last week. And last week, there were two main takeaways that we wanted to kind of keep at our present as we move forward throughout the next couple of weeks. And the first one is this: Christ brings in, he doesn't push away, right? This knowledge that Christ is always drawing us in and never pushing us away. And the second one is this: we remind ourselves and others that even in the most challenging times, Christ is always present. And those two things go hand in hand, right? So those are the two things that we talked about last week as an introduction to mental health and understanding the stigma and the struggle, that Christ is always present. This week, we're going to be talking about the idea of support. Our theme this week is the idea that when life doesn't make sense, we need support, not criticism. When life doesn't make sense, we need support, not criticism. Now, we think about that idea of when life doesn't make sense, right? What does that mean? Because it can mean a lot of things. And I think we can nod our heads and say, yeah, sometimes life doesn't make sense, right? And there's kind of a macro way to look at it and a micro way to look at it. This macro idea is sometimes it feels like we are living in complete chaos in this world, right? Especially now. Especially now, there's so much chaos and division and broken relationships as we look at our world at large. And of course it matters. Of course it matters. But how do we let that not control our lives, right? Because it doesn't make sense. But we also look at this idea of our lives not making sense in the micro level, my personal lives, or the lives of the people that I love. This isn't how it's supposed to be, right? We look at our life and we think it wasn't supposed to be like this. And maybe it's a situational thing that we're working through. Maybe it's a long-term thing that we're working and living with, learning to live with. But it's this idea that when I anticipate my life, when I think or thought about how my life was going to be, this wasn't it, right? This definitely was not what I imagined. I've shared with several of you in my circle, my sphere, that currently I have been struggling with anxiety. And this is new for me. It's not something, not to say that I've never had anxiety, because we all do in some form, but it tends to change and mold, and it comes about in a different way. And my current struggle with anxiety feels a little bit like an uncontrollable ball of energy that sits in the midst of my chest and is desperately trying to get out. So that's fun, right? That's super fun. No, it's not real fun, because it seems out of control. And I know when I first started experiencing this, it's been a couple months now, it took me a minute to realize what it was I was experiencing. I didn't know. Like, it didn't make sense. I'm like, what is that? What am I feeling? It took me a hot minute to figure out, oh, that's what it is. That's what it is. And I think it was hard for me to name that and own it, because in my mind I was thinking, well, that doesn't happen to me. Those things don't happen to me. That's for other people, right? But those things don't happen to me. I'm not supposed to feel this way. And we can show all the empathy, and we can nod our heads in understanding as we try to support people in our lives that struggle. But for many of us, we think it can never happen to me, right? Or I'm not supposed to feel this way. I'm not supposed to have this struggle. And we think this until we do. Until we do. Our story today is an until we do kind of guy, okay? It's an until we do kind of story. It's not supposed to happen to me kind of story. And I'm supposed to be empathetic from afar, because things like this don't happen to me. Our story today is found in the book of Job. And we're going to particularly pay attention to chapter 3 in the book of Job. But in order for us to understand what's happening in chapter 3, we kind of have to take a look at the full book, the full picture. So we're going to look at the full picture, but then we're going to focus in on chapter 3. Excuse me. So if you are not familiar with the book of Job, it is part of a series of books that we call the poetry books of wisdom. The books of the Bible are categorized into different sections to try and help us understand their purpose, why they were written, things like that. And so it's part of this poetry book of wisdom section, which includes Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. It's believed that Job was the oldest written book in the Bible. But there's not a specific time given. No one really knows when, so we're not given a specific time. Now, most rabbis, biblical scholars, do believe that Job was a real person. Whether or not this story is seen as an allegory or not, Job himself was seen as a real person, because we see his name mentioned in later parts of the scriptures as a real person. Regardless of that, Job is often viewed as an example of patience and faith. And we're going to focus, like I said, on chapter 3, but it's important to understand what happened in the first 2 chapters before we go into chapter 3. So we begin with chapter 1, verse 1. This is how the book begins. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. So from this introductory verse 1, we learn that Job is the epitome of a God-fearing man. He is a good and righteous man. And we look at his life, and it's seemingly perfect. He has wealth. He has a family that loves him. He has friends. He follows the rules, and he thrives. His life thrives. And this is what, from this kind of theology, would make sense, right? This would make sense. And God's really proud of him. He's like, check out this guy. That's my man Job. And he is awesome. And he loves me. And he's righteous. And he always does the right thing. In walks Satan. And Satan and God are having this conversation. And Satan's like, well, of course Job likes you. You've given him everything he wants. There's no discomfort. There's no test there. Of course he's going to worship you because his life is perfect. And God's like, no. This guy really does. And so he allows Satan to take away some of these things from Job's life. And in chapter 1, he does just that. Job loses his wealth. He loses his children. And all these boom, 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 these bad things happen. And Job's response is, of course, he's devastated, but he says, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. I will still serve God. And God's like, see, I told you, this is my man. This is Job. He loves me. He's going to serve me. He is a righteous man, a God-fearing man. And Satan's like, okay, sure, but what happens if I actually touch his body, right? I mean, he still has his health. So God's like, okay, fine. You can go ahead and take away his health, but don't kill him, right? So in chapter 2, we see that Satan takes away his health. And Job in this, it's awful, right? It's this kind of kick them while they're down. You know the mentality that we get often when something bad happens? And then something else bad happens, and they're like, well, they come in threes, so there's another thing. We're just waiting for that shoe to drop. And it's just like, I think it's bad now. No, I'm now going to kick you because it's going to get worse. And this is where Job is sitting. He's lost his wealth. He's lost his security, right? He's lost his family. He still has a wife. And now he is so miserable in his health. He literally sits in a pile, right, in this heap, covered in boils, in pain. And this is now his life. And his wife says, you know what? This is looking pretty bad. Why don't you just curse God and die? Okay, get it over with. You must have done something. Just curse God and die. And he won't. And then we see his 3 friends come. His 3 friends come down the road, and they come and they sit with him. They sit with him in silence. And there's an important lesson there, but we're going to move on, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later. So we come into chapter 3 now, which is the chapter we're focusing on for a bit. And Job has sat there, right? The first 2 chapters, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be silent, and my friends are sitting with me, and everybody's telling him, just curse God. And this is his response, which is chapter 3. I'm going to warn you, Job's a bit dramatic. Remember, this is a poetry book of wisdom, so he gets kind of dramatic in his response. This is what he says. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of this birth. Job said, let the day perish in which I was born, and the night that said, a male is conceived. Let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it or light shine on it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds settle upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. That night let thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Yes, let that night be barren. Let no joyful cry be heard in it. Let those curse it who curse the sea, those who are skilled to rouse up Leviathan. Let the stars of its dawn be dark. Let it hope for light, but have none. May it not see the eyelids of the morning, because it did not shut the door of my mother's womb and hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die at birth? Come forth from the womb and expire. Why were there knees to receive me or breasts for me to suck? Now I would be lying down and quiet. I would be asleep. Then I would be at rest. With kings and counselors of the earth who rebuild ruins for themselves, or with princes who have gold, who fill their houses with silver. Or why was I not buried like a stillborn child, like an infant that never sees the light? There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary are at rest. There the prisoners are at ease together. They do not hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slaves are free from their masters. Why is light given to one in misery, and life to the bitter in soul, who long for death, but it does not come, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures, who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they find the grave? Why is light given to one who cannot see the way, whom God has fenced in? For my sighing comes like my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water. Truly, the thing that I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes. So that's Job's response. And it's pretty dramatic, and it's pretty intense, right? We see so many of his feelings in his response. Our passage gives us a glimpse into Job's despair. Basically, he's saying, I wish I had never been born, right? I wish I'd never been born. Why didn't God just allow me to die at birth rather than have this painful life? Then at least I might have known rest. He's in this place where there is no joy, only bitterness, only misery and trouble. And these feelings are very real and they're very intense. And we think about Job's story and we think, that seems apt. I get where he's coming from, right? Job's hopelessness is completely understandable. He's in this space that says, not only do I not understand what is going on, right? But I see no way out of this. Is this my life now? Is this my life now? Is this where I live? The book goes on to portray the ongoing struggle of Job. He's mad, right? He's mad. And he doubts the next many chapters. There are 42 chapters in the book of Job. Many of the next section of chapters is Job reacting to God, blaming God. Through it, he maintains his innocence. He's like, I don't deserve this. I did everything I was supposed to do, right? And his friends, who at first came and just sat with him silently, can't do that any longer. They begin to postulate their own ideas of what is going on, and they are certain that Job is a sinner, right? They're certain that he's deserving of this. I mean, this is pretty awful, Job. You must have done something, right? You must have done something to deserve this. And this was part of the theology, right? Do good things, get good rewards. Do bad things, get punished. And this was very much the way that they believed. But Job had done good things, and he was still seemingly being punished, right? We see the struggle as he tries to make sense, and he makes sense of it, he's trying to, in a very messy and chaotic way, right? I'm just going to lash out in any way that I can because I don't understand what's going on. And so he's messy, and he's chaotic, and there's a part of us, probably a big part of us, that really gets that, right? We get it. It makes sense. When our life is unrecognizable and out of control and we are hopeless, we often respond in a very messy and chaotic way, right? We respond in a chaotic, messy way as we work through our doubts and our emotions and our beliefs about who we are and what we believe about God and where God even is in the midst of our hopelessness. And the messy can be very scary because it feels out of control. It is oftentimes out of control. But I think sometimes there's an honesty in that mess. There's an honesty in the mess that just might be necessary for us. There's a fear, absolutely. But maybe we need to enter into the mess in order to be honest. At least be allowed to be honest. For so many of us, we want to make it simple, right? I either want to simplify God or I want to accuse God based on the limited knowledge that I have. Whether it's our lives or the lives of others that we are observing, we want it to make sense. Make it make sense, right? Well, this is happening because of A, B, and C, right? That's why it's happening. Well, if they just did this, follow these steps, it would solve their problems, right? That's all they need to do. If they just did this, it would solve the problem. Or, God, if you just did this, it would be handled. and we want it to make sense. We want it to make sense. There's a lot of questions in the book of Job, questions that do not have easy answers, questions about suffering, questions about obedience, about spiritual rewards, about prosperity by works. All these things pop up in the book of Job. And the thing is, the book of Job never actually answers the question of why there is suffering in the world. It's always seen as, why is there suffering in the world? And let's look at the book of Job. It never actually answers the question. Job was righteous. That's what we're told. And he suffers. And for many of us, this doesn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense because good people should get good things, right? Good people should get good things. But if that's our belief package, if that's the extent of our belief package, we're just describing karma. Karma with God's name on it. So we ask other questions, right? We ask other questions. Is God cruel? Or does God not operate under the same idea of just that we assumed he does? Is God not just? And we ask these really hard questions, right? But we want really easy answers to them. We want easy answers to them. In the final moments of the book of Job, Job begins to understand, and he's had this back and forth, right? He's laid everything out. He has hurled his accusations at God. He has shown his doubt. He has shown the depths of his soul, and God responds very much with, you don't even know who I am, right? Let me tell you a little something about who I am, right? That's as we follow through the book. But the book of Job, in the final moments, Job begins to understand that our limited perspective, we do have a limited perspective, gives us insufficient cause to accuse the God of the universe. We can never have a full understanding of everything, right? We just can't. There are things we will never know. It's a mystery. And that is very much a part of faith. Here's the thing. It's all good and fine to say, it's a mystery. Faith is a mystery when things are going our way. When we're suffering, that answer is not very satisfying. It's just not. The thing is, we don't know what we don't know. We say that a lot, right? We got to remind ourselves we don't know what we don't know. And when we grasp that, there's a bit of humility that is found. And maybe in our humility, we understand that there's just a lot we don't know. We simply cannot understand all the complexities of God and the universe. However, what we do see at the end of this book of Job in the final chapter is God actually commends Job, right? He commends Job. He says, Job has spoken rightly about him. That's what he says. That's what he says about him. Job has spoken rightly about him. And this may be surprising because it can't apply to everything that Job said, right? He hurled a lot of accusations at God. So God can't mean that those things are right? We follow the full story and see that Job drew hasty and wrong conclusions about God. He was mad and he doubted and he struggled and he let it all hang out, right? But God approves of Job's wrestling. God approves of that. Job came honestly before God with all of his emotions and pain, and he simply wanted to talk to God himself. He wanted to be heard. Please, God, you have to hear me. He wanted to be heard. And God says this is the right way to process through all of this, through struggle, through prayer. The book concludes with Job having his health, his family, and his wealth all restored. Not as a reward, like it's not saying this is a reward for being good, but simply as a generous gift from God, and that's the end of the book. So the book of Job, it doesn't unlock the puzzle of why bad things happen to good people. Rather, it invites us to trust God's wisdom when we do encounter suffering, rather than try and figure out the reason for it. Because when we search for concrete reasons, we tend to either simplify God, like Job's friends did, well, you must have done something wrong, or like Job, we accuse God based on limited evidence. And so the book is inviting us to honestly bring our pain and our grief to God and to trust that God actually cares and knows what he's doing. Now, with all this in mind, we move forward because you're like, well, I thought this week was about offering support. When people are struggling, we're supposed to offer support, and I haven't heard that yet. But here's the thing. I think we have to consider this perspective before we can be the ones bringing support, right? We have to consider it. Consider that there are many in your sphere who have experienced this level of despair that we see in Job, including your church leaders. Consider that there are so many among us who are in pain. And as hard and as messy as it is, we shouldn't look away from the pain that people are carrying. So the million-dollar question is, what do we do? How do we move forward in a way that honors God? Because the whole first part about reacting, we're pretty good at, right? We are messy, right? And there is often chaos and there is pain. But now what? What do we do with it? What do we do with it as someone who wants to support those around us who we see, who we know are in pain? What do we do? Well, a big part of the answer is asking different questions. And I think the question that we need to be asking is, are we listening to one another? Are we listening to one another? I was scrolling through Instagram a while ago. This has been some time, but it made an impression on me that I often go back to it. This is probably at least a year ago, if not longer. And Kelly Corrigan, who is an author, journalist, had posted this picture of something that she had scribbled on a notepad. Listening is so close to love, most people can't tell the difference. And I remember scrolling through and seeing this and it made such an impact on me that I took a screenshot of it so that it would be in my role so that I could see it and I could be reminded of the importance of listening. It's so close to love, most people can't tell the difference. Our main idea this week is that when life doesn't make sense, we need support, not criticism. Job's friends' first instinct, when his friends walked down the lane, their first instinct was to sit and be silent with him. And I think that was a really spot-on instinct, right? We're just going to sit with you. But the reality is they couldn't just leave it there, right? They couldn't just stay there in silence. They couldn't just stay there and give presence, because as time progressed, they decided, no, must do something about this, right? And we can point our finger and judge them all we want, but I think there's many of us who fall in that camp. We see the pain and we're like, well, I must fix it. Let's get out my list. Okay, must fix the problem, must find a reason, must find a solution, right? And we go into this mode because it's all very much part of trying to make sense, right? Trying to make sense, because if I can't make sense of it and I can't find a solution and I see that you're in pain and I can't fix it, then what am I left with? Right? What am I left with? And oftentimes the answer, we don't like the answer. Oftentimes the answer is pain. But here's the thing. Sometimes bearing witness to someone else's experience without fixing it can bring healing. Our world is complex. Our problems are complex. And they're getting messier. And they're getting more complex. If we think they're just going to get simpler, Spoiler alert. Cover your eyes as I tell you the truth. Your eyes, cover your ears as I tell you the truth. They're not going to get simpler. They're getting more complex, which means we can't always know the right answer. We can't always have a solution. We just can't. I know we want to, but we just can't. And so oftentimes, like I said, we see the people around us who are struggling, who are in pain, and we want to be a good friend. I want to be a good friend. I want to help you. I want to fix it. I want to find the solution. I don't want you to be in pain anymore, but it's too heavy. I don't know how. I don't know how to fix it. But there is beauty in sitting with someone in their pain to simply bear witness. I can't fix that. I wish that I could, but I can't. So I won't pretend that I can, because that doesn't do you any good, right? I won't pretend that I can fix it, but I see it. I see it. I see your pain, and I will not minimize it. I won't give you flip reasons or easy pat answers. I will simply sit with you, and I will see you, and I will love you. I don't think many of us are particularly good at that. Right? We just want to fix it, right? We're not good at it. And so something like this may take practice. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Just because it's hard doesn't mean we can't do it. We can do hard things. We can sit in the discomfort. We can sit in the not knowing. We can sit in the not solving. And side note, we need to resist the urge to give responses that don't help, right? I mean, we mean well, so many of us, right? We mean well. I am guilty as the next person. But often our well-meaning wisdom can do more harm than good. Job's friends were quick to offer their opinions on his suffering, and God rebuked them for it. In that final chapter where he commended Job, he rebuked his friends. In our limited wisdom and discomfort with pain, we sometimes say stupid things to people that are hurting, right? We say stupid things. While we want to support our friends and our family, pausing before we speak is wise. We want to be better comforters than Job's friends proved to be. So a helpful reminder of things not to say. Everything happens for a reason. Contrary to popular opinion, that's not a verse in the Bible. People always think that it is. It's not, okay? Some things don't happen for a reason. Some things just suck. God needed another angel. It's not helpful, and it's bad theology. It's really not how that works. Time heals all wounds. It might be true, but I'm sitting in this time right now that's incredibly painful. You have to be strong, or some variation of that. You are so strong, and I am. This is probably the one that I'm most guilty of, and you think, well, what's wrong with that? Don't we want to encourage our friends that they're strong? I mean, yes. Sometimes we shouldn't have to be strong. It may be true, right? You may be so incredibly strong, but sometimes we're exhausted. I don't want to be strong all the time. And so when you tell me that I'm strong, you're telling me that I'm not allowed to be weak. I was in class, as many of you know, I'm back in school, and I was in a class on human development, and our professor was telling us a story a few weeks ago about a young girl who was a victim of sexual abuse. And her mother kept telling her how strong she is. Well, you're strong. You're a strong girl. And she meant well, because she believed her daughter was strong. But it had this effect on the daughter where when she was there were those trying to help her, her response was, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. I'm strong. I'm fine. Because she didn't think she was allowed to be weak. Sometimes we have to be given that permission to set it down. We don't have to always be so strong because it's just not sustainable. And that's okay. We need to give people permission to not always be strong. Sometimes life doesn't make sense. And there are no easy explanations for why people suffer. We cannot fix every problem. All those things we've talked about, and these truths are difficult to accept, but they are reality. And the reality is, when Job faced this, his response was that he wanted to give up. That's the crux of chapter 3. I wish I was never born. Just snuff out my life. I want to give up. And the reality is, many of us have felt that way, or we love people who have felt that way. It's why we come back to this truth that we need support, not criticism. It's a reality that many people feel they simply cannot go on. And many have made the choice to not go on. So we continue to offer support. We continue to offer presence. We continue to give even a small reason to go on. Many of you might be familiar with this symbol. Obviously, it's a semicolon. But if you've ever done any research or reading into suicide prevention, this has become a symbol of suicide prevention, the semicolon. It's a visible reminder that even though you may be in incredible pain, right? You might be in this incredibly painful and hopeless situation. I don't see a way out. This is my life now. I see no other way forward. That this moment is not a period. It's not the end. It hurts. And we see that and we recognize it, and that hurt is real and that hurt is intense, but we mark it with a semicolon. It's not the end. It's not the end. We seek to help others persevere through those moments, turning what appears to be a period into a semicolon. And this not only honors one another, right? I see you. I recognize your pain. I will sit with you. I will listen. But it honors God. I was gifted a book recently, Mostly What God Does. And the first day when I opened up to read it, the very first chapter was about this idea that mostly what God does is love. And I was like, it's so simple, yet so profound. Mostly what God does is love. And that's at the heart of this. What do we do? How do we comfort? How do we support? Because this idea of mostly what God does is love, that's the story of good news. That's the story of good news. At the end of the day, we keep going back to the scriptures, not to find neat answers to every question in our lives. That's not why we go there. We are drawn back because we recognize this story of God continuing to enter into the messiness of humanity and showing love. That's what we see. That's the story of the scriptures. That's the story of the good news. Mostly what God does is love. And so we love because God first loved us. We show this love through the way that we honor each other. Making it through dark times in life and its impacts on our mental health is not glamorous. It's hard. It's the day-to-day, minute-by-minute decisions to move forward, however incrementally, until the light begins to creep back in. Until the light begins to creep back in. As I mentioned earlier, I am back in school studying mental health, and this last week I've been working on a project on resilience, and I am fascinated by this topic. I think part of the reason I'm so fascinated by it is that I am by nature an optimistic person. It's wired in me. And this idea of resilience gives me hope. And so I'm drawn to it. Resilience by the International Resiliency Project is defined as a universal capacity which allows a person, group, or community to prevent, minimize, or overcome the damaging effects of adversity. Now, through this work and study that I've been doing, I was listening to a TED Talk by researcher Nadine Burke-Harris, and she was talking about how childhood trauma affects someone through the course of their life, right? How bad things, these kind of traumas can stay with you, and they affect you through the course of your life and have like these long-term effects. And she gave this example of a bear in the woods. Kind of cute there on the screen, right? But what if, let's say, you were out hiking by yourself and all of a sudden you walked around the path and there's Smokey, right? How would you respond? What would your body do? She says there's something in us that all of a sudden that begins to react, right? She said our heart rate quickens, our eyes dilate, and then our body reacts in a way, one of two things. You know what the two is? Fight or flight, right? You're either going to fight. I don't recommend that if it's a bear. I can take on this bear. No. You're either going to try and fight or you're going to run away, right? And so this is a good thing that our body does this. Our body kind of puts us in that protection mode. And that's a good thing because it protects us, right? It's there to protect us. But the researcher said the problem is what happens when the bear is in your home? What happens when the bear is something you have to face every day? And your body goes into that protection mode on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. Your body going into that protection mode. It affects us, and not in a good way. In fact, studies show that over long terms, it affects our health, right? Not only our mental health, but our physical health as well. And I say this, you're like, well, what does that have to do with, with what we're talking about, right? I say this because when I look at this situation, trauma, bad things happen, how that affect us, and we ask the question, what can be done, right? What can be done? I go back to this idea of resiliency. And there was something in my study of that made me think of the importance of what we're talking about today. There's something incredibly hopeful about it, which, as aforementioned, I love hope. Who doesn't, right? I love anything that brings hope. But when you talk about things that we can do to strengthen resiliency, that there are things that can be done, that there are intentional practices that can happen to strengthen the resiliency in someone's life, and they're working with children in order to do this, Some things are innate qualities. I'm just wired this way. Some things are environmental factors that I have some control over. But one of the things that I noticed as I studied this, I noticed it again and again and again, was one of the predominant factors of boosting resilience was the impact of people. The importance of people in others' lives. The support of people. The reminder that this is not a period, it is a semicolon. And it comes down to this idea that how we support others matters. How we support others matters. So what is the next step? How do we support others in their struggle to take the next step, to turn their period into a semicolon? Well, if you haven't heard this before this morning, I'm going to say it again. I've said it a lot. We listen. We listen. We offer presence. We honor the pain. We continue to give reminders of what we know about them. This is what I know about you. You are loved. You are seen. And this is what I know about God. Mostly what God does is love. Mostly what God does is love. If this is the answer, if this is the root of giving us hope, then it gives us space to be. And there's something incredibly important about that, this space to be. We started a class last Sunday night called Sacred Rhythms. And there's a few of you that are a part of that class. And one of the discussions that we had last Sunday was this constant struggle that we have as people of faith to try and try and try. I want to try so hard. I want to try to be a good Christian. I want to try to be a good person. And we keep trying so hard and we're exhausted. We're exhausted because we're trying so hard. And what we see here is that God invites us to bring our full selves, our full longings. What is it that you want? Because it's of me, right? What is it that you want? He invites us to bring our full pain, our full struggle, and just be. I've brought it before you. I don't have to try so darn hard. I can just be. Because at the end of the day, mostly what God does is love. And so we carry that with us to the tables today as we come to our table of Eucharist, where we are reminded yet again that Christ draws us in. This is an invitation, right? Christ draws us in. We come to the table as a reminder that Christ is always present. So with that in mind, please pray the Lord's Prayer with me. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. You are invited to the tables.
In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all this world, just give me Jesus. When I am alone, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all this world, just give me Jesus. When I come to die, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die,
Just give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus.
I'm going to invite you to stand if you're not standing already and ask if the lights could come up so we could see each other. Just take a minute and say hello to some folks around you. Welcome them. Hi, folks. A couple quick announcements before we head out. As always, if you want information, you can find that on our app. If you haven't downloaded the app or you don't want to, you can find information on our website, on our Facebook page, on any of the socials. You'll find us there. If you want to give to the mission of State Street, you can also do that through our app, through our website, or through the giving boxes located in the foyer and down in the kids' wing. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to start sign-ups for our Thanksgiving meal next week. So exciting! Isn't it exciting? Yeah! Woohoo! So much fun. And then also our Sacred Rhythms class, tonight's the second night. If you still want to be a part of that, it's not too late. Come talk to me after service. It's only a 5-week class, but I know it's like there's a lot of in and out. I know even tonight I'm missing several people because of sickness and people out of town, but we make it work each week. And if you think, oh, I kind of wanted to get in on that, it's not too late. You're welcome to come. You're welcome to come even for 1 week if you want. Just hang out. But that being said, thank you for coming today. And as we go out this week, may we be good listeners, right? We go back to that question, are we listening to each other? And are we listening to each other with the knowledge that we are so loved, right? And so that's a reminder to ourselves and to those that are around us. The most